Well, hello, 2025. We are excited to be in our second full year, kicking off with a guest today, Megan. And so I met Megan in Salt Lake City at the AHIMA convention through Kristen Borth, who seems to know almost everybody that Debbie Primo knows. And so talked to Megan for just a few minutes and got to know her a little, and she was definitely willing to come on and talk with us. And so we are excited to be kicking off the 2025 year. So we're going to talk today about patient identity matching, person matching. We're going to talk about how AI, artificial intelligence, can and does impact that. And we'll talk about one of our favorite things, Megan, which is our story of tell us your HI journey, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But go ahead and pronounce your last name for me so I don't get it wrong.
It's Pruente.
Pruente.
Yes.
I knew I wouldn't even been close.
So. It's okay. I'm not offended. It's my husband's last name, and mine was actually, I was going to say it was easy beforehand, but my maiden name is Munns, and sometimes people would hear Buns for whatever reason. It's always a little bit awkward, so I don't know.
An awkward moment on our very first couple of minutes for 2025. I love it. All right. Well, Megan is the IT director at Banner Health, which is a new recent role for her. She's working on the person identity management team. In this role, she oversees initiatives to enhance person matching and data integrity within the healthcare system. Megan brings her vast industry expertise to educate customers and partners on improving data accuracy, and she also contributes to the internal product strategy and the financial aspects of sales and marketing initiatives. Prior to joining Banner Health, Megan was the Vice President of Industry Relations and Strategy at Harris Data Integrity Solutions, where she advocated for best practices in health person matching and data integrity. With over a decade of experience, Megan is an expert in EPIC, HIM, Master Patient Index Management, Project Management, and Healthcare Data Analytics. She is also recognized as a speaker on data quality topics, having developed an online health informatics course and mentored numerous professionals in the field. Megan's accolades include the AHIMA Rising Star Award of 2014 and the AHIMA Mentor Award of 2023. She holds a bachelor's degree in health informatics from the College of St. Scholastica and a master's of public health from the University of Minnesota. And Megan, I guess because I'm getting older and, I don't know, but you all look so young these days. I can't believe you have this long of a tenure in our profession. Seth, don't laugh. You're going to be you're a decade behind me, buddy.
I'm able to cut some of the gray out still in the hair, so it's all right. When it turns all gray, then we'll have a problem.
Oh my goodness. I'm telling you, everybody's starting to look a lot younger these days. So
I feel that way with the generation below me too. So. Because, 10 years ago when I first took my role at Harris Data Integrity Solutions, I was the baby on the team. And then I quickly became not the baby on the team and mentoring all the new people. So it's funny how that changes really fast.
I did a presentation last week and it was all new grads. And I started throwing out references and they're just staring at me. And I'm like, how old was I when I graduated? Y'all were not even born. No wonder my references aren't landing with this group. It was painful. Quickly realized.
Buddy, know your audience, right?
Yeah, did not understand that audience. And apparently my dad jokes don't resonate with the youth of today. But I've got to figure that one out. But all right, so our first question that we love to ask folks, and I know that you need to do a little bit of a disclaimer, but I'll throw the question out there, do your disclaimer, and then answer the question. But we've not really met anybody that in kindergarten said, I'm going to start this academic journey to go into health information management. I'm assuming your story does not start that way, but I will ask you the question. Tell us your HI journey.
Okay. Well, I am going to say this disclaimer first, because I know I'll forget once we get to the real questions. But because I am working at Banner Health now, I just want to say that anything that's shared by me personally on this podcast is my own thoughts and opinions, and not a reflection of anything related to what's going on at Banner Health or any projects that are going on. So I'm going to keep things kind of high level in that regard. Otherwise, I had to get, several other layers of approval. So anyway, my HI journey, you are right. I did not set out to go on this path, but it has been so fun, and I'm glad that it turned out the way that it has so far. Still unfolding, luckily, but I'm trying to think of how far I go back now, but I guess I'm going to start in high school, because I feel like that's where a lot of people start to decide, what do you want to do with your life? You get asked those big questions. And I, at that time, thought I wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher, and I had a lot of teachers in the family there. I have a lot of teachers in the family, and I also have a lot of lawyers. I am not a lawyer type person, so that route was not for me. So it was like, okay, teacher it is. And, once I started school, I guess part of why I changed too is I was raised by a single mom, and on a teacher's salary with 4 children was a really challenging upbringing. I didn't get a lot of support going to college. And so, school is really expensive, or it was back then. It's continued to be increasingly more expensive. But yeah, I just knew that I did love teaching, but I didn't want to graduate with a mountain of debt and then not be able to pay that back well. I wanted to be self-sufficient in a way that my family wasn't growing up. And so after taking, I think, probably a semester's worth of classes, I had, come to this realization that this is going to be a lot of money. I really am not going to be able to do this on a teacher's salary. So I decided healthcare is where I wanted to go. And I started out at the University of Minnesota, Duluth, and I learned that there was a great nursing program down the street at the College of St. Scholastica. So I attempted that for a little bit. I got my certified nursing assistant's license, and I was working on the med-surg unit in my local town. I'm from Hayward, Wisconsin, which is way, way up north near Canada. So it was a really great experience, but I do vividly remember at one point I was helping at cover in the ER, and I'm from a small fishing town. If you're not familiar with this area, there's lots of fishermen that come up there, and lots of people get hooks stuck in various places in their body. And so this particular man had very calloused hands and had a hook stuck in his hand, and the physician was like trying to dig it out, and I almost fainted. I was like, okay, this is not going to be a good route for me if I am like passing out in the ER. And also it's just really hard work. I had been working like 3 jobs, to pay for schooling and housing and stuff. I was a waitress, and I worked at my aunt's video store. That was back when videos weren't all digital and you had to go like physically rent them. So aging myself a little bit too there. But, and then I worked at the hospital in the evening. So it was just a lot. And so I felt like I had this feeling deep down that nursing wasn't it, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And because I had already taken about a year or so of courses, I had in nursing, I had a lot of science credits. So I had a mentor at the time that referred me to somebody in the health informatics or health information management program at St. Scholastica. And I met Madonna LeBlanc. I'm not sure if you know who that is, but she was a mentor of mine in school. She's retiring this year. And so I just want to give a quick shout out to her. She was amazing and really helped me navigate getting into the HIM program. And it was a really small cohort of individuals too. So it was the first time that I really felt like I belonged. I fit in. I did really well in all the courses, which I was like average student probably in the nursing program, but I just felt seen in this program, and I felt like this is where I need to be. So yeah, that's how I landed in health information management. And I was blessed to go to the College of St. Scholastica, where they have a really long history of professionals in this field. So they have a great network. And when it came to doing, this is also when we did our practicum experience in person. I know a lot of them are being done virtual these days, but we did 3 in-person practicum, and I knew I didn't want to stay local for those. I wanted to be mentored by the best of the best. That's what I told one of my mentors. So I actually came out to San Diego, which is where I live now. For one of them, I went to Rady Children's Hospital for 3 weeks under Casey Birnbaum, which is amazing. I went out to your guys' neck of the woods in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I was under Rita Bowen for 2 weeks there when she was at Erlanger. And I was under Sandra Johnson. I think it's Hennepin County. I was only there for a week, and there was a huge snowstorm that week. So I missed like a couple of days because it was shut down. So it was kind of a blur that week. But yeah, I just had really great mentors, and yeah, that's a little bit about, I'm happy to share any more if you guys want to hear any more, but that was a little bit about my career and kind of.
St. Scholastica, was that in person?
Yes.
All in person. So I was in one of the final cohorts in HIM School of In-Person, and I hear students, I do some of the mentor programs, and I feel like everybody's missing out on the virtual stuff. The in-person thing was so good. Our cohort was also really tight and a lot of fun. I still keep up with a lot of those folks, but even just listening to you talk about the practicums, I mean, you are hitting some of the majors with Casey and with Rita. I just spoke to Rita last week, and she's retired now and hanging out in the cabin. And
I still talk to her on Facebook. I love Rita.
Yeah, but those in-person practicums were so good. I did the same thing. One of mine was back home in Knoxville. And I remember that one of the projects I'd worked on was their chart record locator, and it still used Windows 123. And I kind of thought that I was eventually going to head into IT, which I did. But I remember asking the HIM director, and I said, "What happens if this computer dies?" And she just said, "Oh, we're in trouble." I thought, I wonder how many hospitals are still in trouble with some of those old record locator systems.
Or other various technology tools. I think that's a really good point, though, that you made about, I actually just spoke at San Diego Mesa College's RHIT students. I can't remember what course it was that I talked to, but they are meeting in person for some of theirs. And I like the hybrid model where if somebody, especially if you're an adult learner, you can't make it there, something happened, you can still catch up and not just have to like get notes or something. But there's so much value in being in person. I did my my master's degree mostly online, and it was great, but I don't feel like I have a network of public health professionals like I have a network of HI professionals too. Mm-hmm. Like if I wanted to break into that space, I wouldn't even really know where to start other than blindly applying for jobs, which has not worked well. Even with, I was, when I was looking to leave my last role, I mean, I feel like I have a pretty decent resume at this point in my career, and I was not getting callbacks on anything unless I knew somebody who knew somebody that could put in a good word for me, which is interesting.
Seems like really the trend of the future, right? And it's tough to just blindly apply for anything. I think most people are getting screened out by HR screeners rather than actually getting the conversation. But that's also a nod to the state associations and the local associations. Yes. So if you're a student or a young professional in the HI industry, even if you are in a program that's virtual and you're nowhere near where your school is, you're doing everything virtually, you should still consider going to whatever state you live in and seeing what their state association looks like. And like Tennessee, we have locals. So if I lived in Knoxville and was doing a virtual program from St. Scholastica, I could go participate in the local Knoxville HIM association and get to network with folks and start to be introduced to those folks within the HI industry. So just a side little shout out to the local associations and the state associations. And if you're a young professional or a student, you should highly consider participating in that. Most of those offer discounted or even free registrations for students. So that was a side commercial.
I'm really glad that you put that in there. I put a note in here about volunteering because I did want to tie that back into, so it was a really good segue to that. But every opportunity that I've had career-wise over the years has often come because of something that I've done from a volunteer perspective or just networking. So, it's huge to not only go to these events, but like reach out. People want to get to know you. They want to connect with you. And I was telling students that I talked to at Mesa College, I think, we are working really hard to up our membership, particularly with the next generation. I'm sure you guys are kind of in the same boat over there, but we have such a need for volunteers right now. And I think people get scared by that because they think they need to have years of experience in order to be able to volunteer effectively, but that's not the case. We need people from all aspects of life, the people that have been around for a long time and the people that are brand new, to kind of, bring those people along. Like, have at our state show, we need people to, I don't know, register people at the front desk, or, we're hosting a lot of virtual webinars through CHIA, my state association. We need people that can introduce folks on a call. Like, there's really basic things that you can do to start getting connected with people so they know who you are, and that will eventually lead to more responsibility. And even just hearing the discussions too is really valuable. I just was asked recently to lead for California. A couple weeks ago, we had a ROI workshop. ROI is not my space at all, but I can do the work and like pull in the resources. You don't have to be an expert on everything, but hearing it too. I mean, I know a lot more now today about ROI, having done that too. So hopefully students that are listening to this will feel inspired to get connected too. And it's really advantageous to do that if you're hoping to break into the field.
Yeah, that's great, Megan. And along those lines of, you're not an ROI specialist, right? That's not your wheelhouse, and you learned, but also what you picked up from participating in that event is now that when you have an ROI need, you know who to call. Mm-hmm. And that ROI person can either help you or point you in the direction of the experts that can help you, which has been my favorite part of health information is so vast, and it's only gotten more vast with the onset of electronic information systems, right? And using those at scale. So now we can't know everything about everything that's happening. Patient-generated health data, remote patient monitoring, telehealth, all the rules around release of information versus, and how that ties to patient-person matching, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many things we can't possibly know. Analytics, informatics, data governance, information governance. You can't be everything as a health information professional, so you have to have those contacts. The best place to get those contacts and understand what those are is networking, and the best place for a health information professional to network is within their local, state, or national level health information association. Absolutely. Yeah. Seth and I will preach that all day long.
It's been really helpful for me personally. So yeah. I think when you look at I think a lot of the people you guys are interviewing for this podcast, I haven't listened to every one of them, but the HI leaders, a lot of them, they started somewhere, and a lot of them are actively volunteering outside of their roles, I would say.
Almost all of them, right? That's how we know them, is through that. Yeah. So that's very true. All right. So I want to get to, at the end, if we have time, I know we're kind of running a little bit against a tight deadline here for you, Megan. So if we have time at the end, I'm going to come back and ask you if you have a New Year's resolution or a goal that you want to achieve. Yeah. Right now, I'm going to just ask you, tell us about your focus on person identity matching. What's going on right now? How did you start? Did you always have a passion for it? And what's going on? What do you like about it?
Okay, so this is another area where I didn't set out to be an expert on this one niche area of HIM, which is why I think volunteering has been really helpful for me too. Like, I can keep up to speed on other things that are going on too. But I started right out of school. Actually, I graduated at a really good time. 2011 is right when the EHR boom was kind of taking off. And so I was able to land a role at Aurora Healthcare, which is based over in Milwaukee. And I joined their IT department as a business analyst. They were deploying Epic at the time. And so I was able to kind of get in on the ground floor on the IT side of the house, which again, never thought I would go into IT, but now that I'm here, loving it. And so that was kind of like the sounding board to working on the vendor side. So I worked at Harris Data Integrity Solutions for 11 years, and we specialized in person identity management, or accurate person identity management. So I've really honed in on that niche field. And now I'm carrying that forward in my role here at Banner Health. I've been here. This is the start of my 4th week here at Banner Health and overseeing things that are going on here. But I would say some of the biggest challenges with person identity management are the vastness of the data that we're storing in these systems. When you have more identities stored in a system, the likelihood of that identity being similar enough to another identity is high. And then you add the complication of people naming their twins or family members, same or very similar name, like twins with the same exact everything except for 1 letter difference in their name. It's really hard for a lot of our tools, our algorithm tools, to be able to discern which record is truly a duplicate and needs to be merged together with errors like that. Because, you can easily typo something on the keyboard. And so which one of those are real typos and which one of those are family members that need to not be merged together. Even with the best tools, I will say Banner is using a lot of really awesome tools on our side. The data is the challenge because there's so many errors that are being input into the system. And so it's an evolution. I will say it doesn't take, I think a lot of people think you can just apply the best technology and it'll resolve the challenges, but you have to look at it from like the whole spectrum, from front end to back end, to try to mitigate it across the board. So looking at your registration processes, how the data is being collected, how the data is being stored in different systems, because they can store that data differently. How are your identifiers being captured in all those various systems? So it can be really challenging. There are a lot of tools that AHIMA and the ONC have been working on getting out there for us as of late. And so I'd highly recommend, if your organization hasn't looked at them, to go look at them. So it would be the AHIMA and ONC did a collaboration a few years ago on standardizing address to match USPS standards. So that's a really great tool. There's both a technical tool and then an operationalized tool for that piece. And then AHIMA also has the naming conventions guide, which talks about specifically like challenging use cases and like how you would capture a person that has just a single name, a mononymous name, how you would capture in your system if I'm trying to think what else is there. If it's a baby record or an alias record, like what are the best practices for that so that you're not creating a bunch of noise in your system.
So when you say baby record, you're talking about baby Smith, who doesn't have a name yet. Is that what you mean by baby record?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the challenges really is the data itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
The quality of the data, the vastness of the data, all of those things. And then, and you mentioned AHIMA and the ONC and what they're doing. What are some of the best practices that you have, that you've kind of deployed in some of your work?
So I would say best of breed technology in conjunction with policy updates and a single point of registration. So if you have multiple points of entry and multiple systems for registration, trying to consolidate that is really helpful. There's also been a lot of conversation lately since the pandemic about like patient portal usage or being able to schedule appointments that way too. So creating tools that can validate identities that way instead of just accepting everything. So there's tools now that can, without saying like, is this you pick from the list, it'll say, have you ever lived at this address before? Which one of these have you lived at before? What kind of car have you driven in the past? So, those extra questions that could be asked to validate who you are before creating just another record is also helpful.
Is it a crazy question to ask that it's 2025 and we're still talking about how to identify the correct patient? I'm sitting here thinking, what are we doing? Did we get the cart before the horse when we deployed EMRs back in the revolution of 2010, 2011? Yeah. And it's just fascinating to me to think that we're still having to have these conversations. But, healthcare moves at the speed of snail. So, we'd still be trying to argue about the standards if we wouldn't have just pulled the Band-Aid off and deployed the EMRs and figured it out. But it's like, I'm sitting here going, oh my goodness, like it just seems crazy to me to think that we're in 2025.
Obviously, if you can't do identity right, it's hard to really do anything else right. After that, it's the backbone to everything. But I think it's also really, I don't know if you want to talk any more about patient identity, but it's also a really good segue to AI topics too, because it's not just identity data that's messy. It's all the data, a lot of the data that we're capturing. And when it's captured in different data silos, like how do we pool it together accurately in one system so that we can use that data meaningfully to utilize AI tools or other technologies that have been hot off the press lately.
Well, let's run with that. I mean, so let's talk AI. Like we always laugh and say it's not a podcast if we don't talk about AI. So how, and one of the things that you mentioned earlier was the vast amount of data. And my mind immediately went to, well, there's the AI use, right, of being able to consume and digest all that information. So how do you use AI in the patient identity world?
So, I don't know today that a true large language model is being used in person identity management, but there are other tools that fall under AI, like algorithms and machine learning and other various tools that have been around for a while. So again, it's a best of breed tools are great. They're a piece of the puzzle here, but again, it's only as good as the data we're feeding it. And then there's also challenges with when you think about some of these bigger tools that can leverage outside sources, outside of healthcare sources, like telecommunications and credit history information to retrieve like historical addresses and phone numbers. That's only helpful for adult records because children don't have that kind of history. And so when we don't capture some of that additional information or data points, it can be really challenging on those records to discern who is who. And then as the databases get bigger, we consolidate more. We think about this from like an HIE perspective. It makes it really hard to link up the patients accurately across all these systems. So, but to answer your question, how am I using it to, I guess more broadly, using AI tools personally, I'm using a lot of free tools. We have Copilot at Banner Health too, which is really helpful. So I have been the biggest proponent of getting used to these tools because I think if you can use them with really basic use cases, when we get to the point of being able to ask a Copilot or something in AWS's Databricks, you put a question out there, you're familiar with the type of questions that you need to be asking, how specific you need to be to return the right answer, and then how to QA it too, because that's the biggest thing. Like, I think you guys have probably talked about this a lot. Being able to fact check your AI is important too. So, I have an upgraded tool for upgraded license for ChatGPT. I've done lots of sessions this year speaking at different events on how to use ChatGPT in your day-to-day work, both personally and professionally. I think I'm talking at the Illinois December conference in a couple of weeks. So if anyone wants to hear that, it's all remote, I think. So you could tune in remotely. I also talked about it last year on the California EHI symposium, and I think you can purchase that event still on our forum. We have a new one coming up in February, all AI focused, which has been really great. But yeah, I think just getting used to these tools, how to ask questions in Copilot or Gemini or ChatGPT really gets you familiar with how the large language models are working. And then I think you can translate a lot of that knowledge once you have access to those tools at work.
Yeah, I think that's really good because you've got to have familiarity with it and how to interact with it and how to fact check it, that you can't just blindly trust those things. But Shannan, you're our resident entrepreneur. I'm
dying.
I'm listening to your brain. There's probably smoke coming out of your ears of how we could use prompts to help registration clerks through identifying information and then going back. I don't think I've ever seen a portal or anything like that asking the questions, Megan, that you asked of like, have you ever lived at this address? Or, was the last surgical procedure? I don't know what the questions could be, but I'm sitting there thinking, wow, that's an opportunity for a large language model to go back and look at all that history, patient history, and start to match things and help the registration clerk through the prompting to make sure they've identified the correct patient. And I know Shannon's just going to town in her brain.
I've seen those. I've seen some of those questionnaires. It seems that they're related to getting transcripts and or during a credit process of some kind when you're opening some kind of a financial account or something like that. So, but I haven't seen them in healthcare. And healthcare is a great place for them. Why reinvent the wheel, right? If it's working to match them up in other industries, then we should definitely be using it here. But an interesting thing would be, so you're talking about using AI in finding a large language model for this patient matching. It's a little bit of a conundrum, because if you're talking about patient matching, that's very personal, and that would be more of a small language model. You wouldn't necessarily lean on an LLM to identify and match up a person, because you're really trying to isolate and find that person's information and get them connected to the right thing. But I do think there's an opportunity, once you have built a process for best practice to identify this person, there's an opportunity, if that person has had a bilateral mastectomy, they may not understand. Everybody doesn't understand all that language, right? So then take that procedure out to an LLM and put it in terms that a fifth grader could understand, and bring it back and say, have you had this procedure, right? Is this a procedure you've had in the past, something like that? So it's using that very personal, intimate information and sending that out to an LLM to make it understandable for the person that has to try to answer these clinical questions that they have no idea how to answer. So that's an interesting thing. But I have a different question also about Copilot. You mentioned using Copilot and learning how to use these tools. So my biggest question, I got a few things that I do as an entrepreneur, and one of them is a couple of them are related to artificial intelligence. But one thing that we've found to be true is that if you have an account with Copilot or ChatGPT or Llama or Claude or any of them, even if it's through your organizational email, that account is just yours alone. Do you have an organizational wide instance of Copilot that other people in your organization can access your GPTs or your data or your inputs and outputs? Because that's where I found the biggest problem is, even though it's an organizational license, if you leave, all of that goes with you, because it's not necessarily accessible to the organization.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I just got my Copilot like 2 weeks ago, but I will say there's, because the Copilot is on my work account, at least I think it's work. I don't think I can take this with me if I go anywhere. I would assume that's the case, but I will confirm that, because now I'm curious. That's
a great question.
A little bit scary from like a privacy standpoint too, because it
is absolutely, because some people would have some potential PHI or PII access, some would not, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'll find out the answer to that and I can get back to you. But I have, I think I mentioned the upgraded version of ChatGPT. I still have both of them open, even though Copilot is supposed to be able to function very similar to ChatGPT. There's just some things that I don't want to put on my personal one. Like if I'm researching something, the number of tokens that can be input into ChatGPT is just a lot more. And because I have the upgraded version, I can do different stuff with it too. So there's certain use cases that I'm like going back and forth between the two. But if it's like an internal email, I use it a lot for email generation, I will just say, because writing emails is like the bane of my existence. I do not like that piece of it. I want to stay like focused on the actual real work and not responding to people. So I do use it for a lot of like just drafting emails and then copying and pasting it back over. I obviously haven't been able to utilize ChatGPT with PHI. or like any kind of data analytics, but I do have the ability to do data analytics with my upgraded license for ChatGPT. I can also like upload photos of stuff. So this is, again, more of a personal thing too, but I can attach photos. I can attach, spreadsheets of certain things that I want to analyze. But, and I think on my Copilot it does the same too. I haven't played around with it yet. Been a little bit leery of sharing PHI in there, even though I've been told it's okay.
Yeah, it still feels weird.
It's a little nervous, and you really shouldn't. A health information professional should not be putting that PHI or PII in there until you know the answer to the question we just asked, right? Like, who all's going to have access to my instance? Because if somebody has access to it, it's still not protected, because that person that has access to Copilot may not have any need to have, they may exceed minimum necessary, right, to do their job. So it's a really risky situation.
Yeah.
Right. Another question related to AI. I would like to ask you if, I don't know exactly what your role in your budget is. However, my biggest question, you were talking about tokens a moment ago. So the costs have come down significantly, even from early 2024 to, where they ended in 2024. But there's still could be a significant budget item. Is there a budget line item specific to LLMs and AI? Because that's going to, I'm afraid that's going to take some organizations by surprise.
Yeah. And I think, not to share too much on the Banner side, but we have a whole AI team that is underneath the same structure that I'm under. So I get to hear a lot of the updates that are going on. It's super exciting work, but also there's a lot of unknowns still. I actually just had a meeting with the person that's leading up the team a couple weeks ago. And that is one of the challenges with utilizing this tool, is that it's really hard to forecast budget, because it's based on, how big the queries are that people are putting in there. And so they're going to be rolling out a new tool here soon, and it'll be, I think, piloted with a smaller group, so they can kind of get an idea of like, what kind of questions are going to be asked and what is the cost looking like. I know as we roll it out to more, that will expand, but they're just really trying to get an idea of what that looks like, because that's a huge challenge on the LLM side of things, is budgets, when you don't have control over what people, unless you of course limit it. But in my experience, when you limit the number of and maybe it's not as big of a deal for when you're doing specific, so this project is linking a lot of healthcare specific data behind the scenes that we can then ask questions about that data and do a lot of analytics, putting together charts and graphs. So things that make it really quick to put that together, that would oftentimes take many hours to do that manually. So it's really exciting work. But so in those use cases, typically you're not putting like super large prompts in, or like on ChatGPT, if I'm researching something, I'll put like copies of papers and stuff, like summarize this for me and give me like main takeaways. Like, I don't think people will be doing that kind of stuff on these types of platforms, but you never know, I guess.
You never know. It depends on the controls you put in place, and how specifically you make your agents, right? How specific are your GPTs to say, this is for this, this is for this output. This is the only thing you can use this one for, and you limit the access to that to whomever would have an interest. So it's a fascinating conversation for sure. Seth, anything else?
No, I think a lot of our folks are still trying to comprehend AI, let alone build out a budget for it and understand that. So it's a good awareness item to bring forward. And this has been a fascinating conversation, Megan. Thank you for joining HIPcast. This has been really good. We'll have to have you on again once you get your feet wet there at Banner.
Yeah, and maybe I can get some disclaimers, additional approvals signed off, so that I can share a little bit more about stuff that we're doing over here, because it is really exciting work. But before we end, I did just want to say just one last plug on AI. I know I've already kind of said it, but please, if you haven't played around with ChatGPT or some other free tool, they are free. You can download the app on your phone and start asking like really simple questions. Give me a chocolate chip cookie recipe. I mean, the holidays are coming up. We're going to be cooking a lot. So lots of cooking stuff, use cases for that personally. But just start getting used to it, because I think, as these models start to get leveraged more in healthcare, the people that don't know how to create the right prompts and don't know how to use these tools are going to have a lot of catching up to do. So again, you can use it in your personal life if you're afraid to use it for other use cases, but really get your hands in there and don't be afraid to start learning. That's my biggest.
And a good for health information professionals that have that fear, along with what you said earlier, you don't like to use it for emails because you don't like to answer emails. You like to get the work done instead of responding to people. All I was singing was a person is like, I'm antisocial and I don't want to talk to people, but I know that's not what you meant. But the interesting thing is, for health information professionals, put that, let's start there. If you're not interested in baking, or if you want to use it as a use case, just don't put your organization name into your personal GPT and just say, hey, I've got to write an email response to this, and copy and paste the non-identifying information from your email into that. And then, let it write you a response and determine, hey, does that sound like me? And if it doesn't sound like you, you could say, hey, could you rewrite this response and make it sound like it's coming from a health information management professional, or make it, because you can give it prompts like this. It's really simple. You say, in fact, I have a GPT for policy making and policy writing, and I named it Grace after Grace Whiting Myers. And so now I say, hi, Grace, how are you? And Grace, and I said, this is why I named you that. And Grace said, it's an honor to be named after such a stellar professional, or whatever. So you can get personal with your GPTs and make it like a, cyber relationship. Don't get carried away. I'm not asking.
Getting weird. Getting weird.
Better to write me some policies than a GPT called Grace.
Yeah, I know some HIM folks that need a friend. Maybe that's probably the better path for them.
You need a real friend. You can find me on LinkedIn if you need a real friend. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you, Megan, for joining us. And it's been a pleasure. And Shannan, until next time, my friend.
Yeah, thanks. See you next time.